Okay, so we're just waiting on a couple of people to join. Welcome everyone to Crafting and Winning Sales Strategy for B2B Tech Companies. So I'm looking forward to guiding you guys through. I get a lot of questions around how to build an excellent sales strategy. What is it made up of? So we'll just wait a minute or two for everyone to come, and then we will kick off. So welcome everyone. I'm your host today, James Kerr Reed. I'll give you a brief intro into us in a second. I see people joining now, so I will kick off and also give you an overview of today. So in terms of today, I'm going to go through what's the analysis I need to do first when creating an excellent sales strategy. How do I structure my sales strategy? What is it made up of? How do I structure a realistic and executable plan? What should a plan look like? What are the best practices for smartly executing my plan? And as we go through the presentation, feel free to put your questions in the chat and I can answer as many as I can as I go. Or alternatively, at the end, I'll cover as many questions as I can in the time that we've got today. So in terms of myself, I'm James Kerr Reed. I'm the CEO and founder of Sales to Startups. I've advised over 70 business-to-business seed and Series A tech companies over the last 3 to 4 years. And yeah, really pleased to be here and be teaching you something that I'm really passionate about, which is obviously gaining clarity in tech sales operations in order that startups can create predictable growth. So here we go. So what analysis do I need to do first? So when we're looking at a sales strategy, there are obviously quite a few inputs in order to come into the decision and therefore the direction in which we want to go in. So we start with the goals and the outcomes. We look at the problems. These are kind of surface level problems that often come out. There'll be complaints like, I don't have enough leads, or, we're not converting enough customers, our deal value is a little bit low. So these are kind of common problems, but then we need to identify the root causes of these problems. Now that is often an overlooked point by CEOs of tech companies. Once obviously we've looked and identified those root causes, we now need to weigh up some options as well in terms of fixing this problem. And then once we've weighed that up, we can obviously create an excellent sales machine as well off the back of that. So in terms of first and foremost, you need to embrace reality. I hear so many tech startups saying that we're going to grow, 4,000% in a year. I'm not one to stop anyone's ambition, and I'm one to aggressively grow companies, but we need to understand what today's state is in order to understand where our desired state is. For example, if that's today, what's the case in a year's time from now in terms of what you're looking to achieve? But you have to embrace the reality. There's no point trying to cream over or trying to alter reality in order for you to feel good. This is business and this is harsh. We've got people's livelihoods on the line and also often our own reputation as well. So the more we lie and deceive and misdirect our team, the harder it is going to be for us to create an excellent sales strategy and therefore a growing business with predictable revenue. In terms of data points, so when we look at that first step, obviously we've got our goals and outcomes, we've understood where we are, and now we're looking at identifying some of the problems. So I've listed out here some of the data sources that typically you would use in order to understand what's going on in your company. This won't necessarily give you the root causes, but it will give you some conclusions and obviously some problems you will realize from the data that you collect. So we would look at the marketing data, including all the normal inputs, say your marketing analytics, say Google Analytics, your CRM if it's housed there as well, any kind of email platforms also, lead pages or anything else you might have, sales. So really taking a deep look at your sales operation, looking at the stage progression, looking at deal values, the deal volumes, the timing stage, lots of different metrics in there. So I'm not going to go through all of each of these metrics. Customer success as well, understanding that onboarding and growth journey from a new customer to an advocate as well. What does that look like? And then often overlooked by a lot of strategists in the marketplace is actually correlating these three kind of growth levers of marketing, sales, and customer success, and correlating that with your financial reports. One of the best ways to do that is through a customer invoice report. So you can look at some of the buying trends of those clients. Look at the frequency of purchase, look at how many days it takes them to pay from invoice date to actually invoice paid. These are important things if you're wanting to grow a business that is ultimately shows an investor a path to predictability, and obviously a path to predictable profit as well in the future too. So once you've collated all of that, think about how reliable is this data? How much of it do you have? If you're an early seed client, you may not have too much at this point in time, but is that therefore enough to draw down some conclusions from? So one of the questions I get asked a lot as well is, how do I find the root causes? So there's a couple of questions that I'd recommend you guys to take on when looking to build your own sales strategy, or even when we work with companies, these are similar questions, if not more, that we ask ourselves when looking at the root causes. So what are the reasons I'm noticing this problem? When did I notice this problem? Who is responsible for this problem? And what isn't happening, and what is happening that shouldn't be? So 5 key questions. These are not the exclusive list, but definitely understand, what is some of the causation behind some of your problems today. We're taking that kind of correlation maybe from the data sources and then really examining them with a microscope as to the causation as well. So we looked at options and analysis as well. Think about collating some of your initial options as well. And when looking at these options, a couple of questions of 7 in total I've listed out here is to evaluating the options you create in terms of building a sales strategy. So you might have an indicative plan at this point, and really examining that plan or solution and thinking, what are we really capable of doing? If we created an option that needs 7 people and we've only got 4 people in our company in that domain or area, then that may not be a viable plan. What are we willing to do as well? Often we set these metrics and plans in isolation, but is your team really prepared to do 100 calls per day or 100 emails per day for 20 days in a row? Are they willing to do that? Is that an uptake from where they were before? Are they willing to do that? Are they embracing that? Have they done that before? Are they willing to do it ultimately as well? Because we need to not just postcard the destination as leaders, but we need to motivate the emotional side of our team and employees in order to get things done and obviously move the needle in our business. So also looking, like I said, resources and time. Also asking yourself as a leader, what don't I see? It's often the things that don't necessarily come out to us or even the leaders that we coach and mentor at tech CEOs of those companies. Often there are blind spots, so we need to see if we can identify them early as well before we create our machine. Also think about, as tech companies and tech CEOs, sometimes we have massive expectations of our team, of ourselves, of our culture, of our business. So thinking about, have we taken a dose of realism with those expectations, or are we executing actually a really good plan, but it's the execution standards and intelligence that is letting us down in terms of the progress we need to do from getting from today to the desired state. Also evaluating obviously those options in upside and downside, and being able to obviously live with that downside or mitigate against it. And then one of my favorite questions is, how could we screw this up? There's so much human error in business. A lot of people said that 80% of business is psychology. And so thinking about what are some of those emotional responses or practices that you see yourself or your team sometimes do when either things get busy or the going gets tough, really calling that out early on as well. So we're going to talk about, how do we structure your sales strategy? Um, so there are three key parts. We've analyzed over 216 startup mistakes in the marketplace and found that there are three key areas we could assimilate all of these problems to: the proposition, the people, and the process within your business. So we're going to emulate that. Obviously, we've done a lot of the research for you, so hopefully that will give you a head start as well. So in terms of your proposition, certainly there is a lot of information available online. If you go to salesforstartups.co.uk /3 hyphen assets, plural, you can download the free canvas, which you can create your value proposition, as that is really the bedrock of any sales strategy. It's market identification, the value identification for that market, and obviously for that product and solution that you have, that's most important. Otherwise, you could hire the wrong people, you could put in the wrong processes, you could over engineer things when they don't need to be. So we have to get this right. This is the first step for your sales strategy, and that needs to be called out quite clearly as well, so that everyone can center on the same idea and the same mission. So we then look at your people as well. So when you think about either expanding your team or ultimately looking at improving the people that you have, we need to think about obviously the goals that you have. We talked about target customer, obviously in the profile, understanding that sales cycle, understanding that addressable market, and then also understanding what budgets you have available. Not only in operating cash, maybe that's financing cash if you've recently raised as well, and obviously projected a revenue that is due to arrive into the business. What sort of time frame would you expect for the onboarding, and therefore the break even point and then the profit point of those new staff that you have as well. So really ascertaining what you have in front of you, what budget obviously then for you have available, and therefore that can inform your choices as to the people that you put into your sales strategy as well, whether that's hiring or improving individuals. It also could be reallocating some of your resources within your team to more clearly define roles as well within your sales strategy. Also, we get asked a lot about sales structures as well. I've picked a couple here. This is not the exhaustive list, but just an indicative guide as to look what a flat structure may look like. You may be in this camp at the moment where you're the founder and CEO. You have a couple of salespeople and customer success people coming into you. Then often, in order to accelerate growth, kind of beyond the sort of million ARR level, and especially Series A and beyond, we're often looking to build pods as well that are self-sufficient and also self-fulfilling as well, and interdependent, as I like to say. And then often what you'll see in bigger business that some of you might have experienced before, you have kind of specialized functions, whether that's inbound and outbound functions and leaders, and obviously the people within that that you can see as well. And obviously within these big camps, say within the closers and the farmers, there may be several roles within those big teams as well. So processes, moving on to the third element of the sales strategy. I talk about dynamic trio. I think sometimes we try and innovate too quickly and rather than optimize what we've got, especially in the seed and Series A, even pre-seed as well. The game here really is conversion. We need to show that we have traction in the marketplace, and therefore the dynamic trio here of the sales process, lead acquisition process, and the nurture process will get you to where you need to be, which is typically a point of getting traction, predictable revenue quarter on quarter, and ultimately looking at like a very attractive and systematic operation that can be then funded with external funding, or whether that's debt or equity as an example. So we get asked about how do I structure my plan. This is one of the questions that came before today's webinar as well. So I'm going to cover this as well as to some of the key parts of the plan. So when thinking about your plan, think about the time frame. You know, we're a big fan of 90-day horizons at sales startups, and that's what we implement within every business that we help in terms of creating sales strategies and then executing those sales strategies with them. Also, think about the platform as well. You know, a plan is not necessarily one to be created in a Word document and shut away. How are people going to see and interact with this plan? Is it going to, for example, be on Asana, is the platform that we use? You might use Jira, you might use kind of a planning tool in Microsoft as an example, but it needs to be visible to your audience in order for people to engage with it, view it, understand it, dissect it, and potentially change or alter it as we go as well. Third is thinking about the expectations of the people and also the expectations of the people when interacting with the plan as well. Often, sometimes the contributor roles do see things as the leadership sets the structure of the strategy and the plan, and then ultimately that's kind of left and then they just are there to implement it. But we need to be a bit more engaging than that. Also, it's great to have even 90-day goals, which is a nice time horizons in tech startups, but we need to set interim measurement and milestones within that. So for example, the first 2 weeks, the first 4 weeks, the first 6, 8 weeks, what are some of those milestones that you use? For us as a business, we recommend a 2-week sprint methodology. We were one of the first in the UK technology scene to implement 2-week sprints into sales teams. So we are a big believer in that, and certainly helps us grow companies, you know, by 100 to 400% at one time. Then finally, sort of think about the working practices that you have as well, whether that's, you know, the review of the plan, those weekly meetings, that commenting on the plan itself so it's all visible to everyone is very important as well. So does anyone want to have a look at what a plan might look like? Okay, some good responses on that. So yeah, let's have a look at that. So what should my plan look like? So typically as well, this is obviously an overview at this point in time. It's not your plan of choice, but you would have a quarterly goal. We talked about a 90-day horizon. Then you want to break that down into key results. This is an example of obviously, you know, where that revenue would come from. You can see sort of 260 from new clients, 215 from existing clients, and then a key result around people as well. And then you would have milestones within that. So we've just used every 2 weeks, what are the milestones, for example, of the 215 and the 280. There's a small mistake here, and the 2 new salespeople as well, and then the checkpoints as well. So when you're going through each of those sprints, you may review as well how you're facing on those key results, and then finally on the quarter objectives as well. Also then obviously looking layered down in terms of some of the objectives. Here are some of the examples of some of the ones that we've created as well. There's obviously activities within each of these objectives, but you're able to break down, say, a quarterly cycle into maybe 12 objectives as an example. And then obviously you're putting dates on the achievement of those objectives, and obviously at the end of the sprint, we're talking 2 weeks here as well. So yeah, quite a lot to do. Quite a lot to break it down from just the revenue, key results, into obviously those milestones, and then obviously into the objectives themselves according to the sprint number or time frame as well. So yeah, quite a sophisticated skill. So I was asked before today as well to share some best practices when creating your sales strategy. There's quite a few as well, but I just wanted to call out a couple by the time, and then we'll jump to some questions as well. So first and foremost, you need to take a data first approach before any emotional judgment. I think as CEOs and leaders, often we've created a great product and it's the struggle to sometimes market or get greater traction from those early customers and early adopters you've got into creating it into a vehicle for product market fit. So the data enables us to just be a little bit more objective than maybe a subjective kind of emotional judgment. Also, one thing that we find works really well is that you have a weekly review. Obviously, say you were running 2-week sprints, you might have say a Friday weekly review, and then on say the Monday you might have a planning meeting as well, to talk about the week ahead and what's going on, what needs to be achieved that week, and then clearly a sort of retro or a fortnightly sprint review, as we refer to it as here, to look at what was achieved in that sprint, what's still to do, what needs to be reallocated or deferred as well. One of the other big things that I put down here is that tech CEOs, especially with all the hats that they're wearing, lots of different ideas, lots of different initiatives, often quite a public place as well. There's lots of ideas coming at you from your team, from the marketplace. So when you created your 90-day plan in this example to supplement your sales strategy, um, think about when something new comes in. Does this idea accelerate, delay, or replace an existing initiative? Just think of it like we've only got a certain amount of resources as well, and we have to reallocate those resources in such a way to create energy behind an initiative as well. We've only got so much focus and time available to us to execute on. Also, one thing, if you are planning, obviously for the next quarter as well, if you look at kind of a day 75 of the 90-day horizon. So, for example, if you ran Jan to December, at the middle of the third month, you could then look at planning for obviously the next 90 days. That would enable you to obviously do that proper problem identification, those root causes, weigh up the options, create obviously the machine that you want, put down those 3 elements of proposition, people, and process in your plan, and then obviously orchestrate the plan in the correct way as well. So ensure you have bi-weekly milestone metrics to measure progress against. We covered that in the previous point about having those key results and actually bi-weekly measures to measure against as well. Because in technology and startups, we've got to be agile. And if, for example, we get to the end of the sprint or even the Friday sprint review as well, we need to be able to be agile and react accordingly, and maybe look at other ways of creating traction in the marketplace. So just to recap on today, I've got a couple of questions here to cover. I know we're coming up to time as well. So we covered what's the analysis I need to do first when creating my sales strategy. How do I structure my sales strategy? How do I structure a realistic and executable plan? What should a plan look like? What are the best practices for smartly executing my plan? Cool. So I've got a couple of questions here. I'm going to cover them as well. Obviously, for those who don't know me and want to connect with me further, here is my LinkedIn, as well as you can obviously book a call with our Chief Revenue Officers, or CROs as we call them, to obviously help you build your sales strategy, for this existing or next quarter coming up as well. So in terms of questions, we've had a couple here, around the common mistakes of tech founders. So I can cover that with regards to sales strategies. So thanks for that question. In terms of the biggest mistakes, I think often we set goals first and then think about how we can achieve them. I think if you were to take a data first approach, it would enable you to set better, more accurate goals, rather than necessarily dreaming up the goal and then trying to fit the plan that will achieve it as well. So yeah, certainly do the analysis first. The second thing is that if you're able to analyze, the 3 Ps, that proposition, people, and process, you'll understand where some of the weaknesses are. I think a lot of tech CEOs, often not from a sales experience, talk about we have a kind of scrappy inbound or outbound sales process, and therefore, often appoint a VP of sales in order to improve the rigor in the process. It is true that you probably do need some process improvement, but ultimately, the first building blocks are that proposition and the people, and you need to kind of go in that order. The process is like an optimizing factor, it's kind of adding fuel to the fire. But if you don't even have a fire originally in terms of, the key elements of, heat and wood, as an example, in proposition people, you will struggle to get traction in the marketplace. Cool. Someone's asked about, do you do more around selecting a great team? So it's a good question. We do have another webinar coming up as well on developing a world-class team. So I'm happy, to send you the information there as well. If anyone else would like it, please comment away, and we'll drop that through to you via email. Cool. Okay. Any last questions before we finish? Like I said, thank you very much for attendance today. I know I haven't got to all these questions, but I know that we're coming up to time. So if you'd like to reach out to me via LinkedIn or visit our website, you can book a call with our team there as well. We'd love to have you on there and speak with you and understand your goals and objectives, and see if we can get you closer to that the winning number and winning revenue you need. Thanks a lot, everyone.